Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, Tina Fordham, Global Insight. Single best idea on a Wednesday, a quiet summer Wednesday. I looked at the news, I'll say at 1 a.m., and then, you try to wake up from the surveillance night sleep. And the news flow was absolutely extraordinary. And it's really where our many news bureaus pay off. Ethan Bronner let us off today from Tel Aviv, was just absolutely fabulous on what we saw in Beirut and in Tehran, and many, many other stories, including the Fed coverage today to go to. But all of it was simply about a continued equity lift. I have no idea where that's going. Bull or bear. Gina Martin Adams showed up. She has been absolutely brilliant about a revenue slowdown, an organic sales growth slowdown. Not too optimistic it's coming back, but huge margin strength seen by numerous corporations. And of course, we've seen that with Microsoft yesterday, even though it's off, and with Google, and we'll see what Meta and the rest do here in the coming hours. Ben Snider holds court at Goldman Sachs with David Kostin. We asked him about the persistency of the moats around AI.
It's important to remember, before anyone was focused on the AI investment boom of the last year and a half or 2 years, these stocks have outperformed for most of the last decade. And they've done so because they have great business models, they have moats, they have above average revenue growth, and they have profit margins that are 2 or 3 times those of the rest of the S&P 500. So that means a lot of cash flow generation, and they've successfully reinvested that cash flow to fuel successive growth.
Ben Snider had a 72-page deck. Again, we protect the copyright of all of our guests. Please go to Goldman Sachs to get the great work that they're doing there on the equity market. It was great at the end of it to link in Kostin's work with Ben Snider, and of course with Abby Joseph Cohen, who was recently with us now at Columbia Business School. What else do we do on Single Best Idea today? We had like 14 options. I'm kidding. Maybe it's only 9 options. But the answer is we had to address our international relations, and some would say our fractured and certainly dynamic international relations. Paul Sweeney was great. We were through all the different plots that you can talk about, all the news and the zeitgeist. And Paul Sweeney just said simply to Tina Fordham, what about Ukraine? Here is Tina Fordham, Fordham Global Insight, on Ukraine into August of 2024.
This is the danger zone summer. I think yesterday Russia launched its sort of biggest drone attack on Ukraine for some months. It's also the height of the summer fighting season, and I'm arguing that the period between now and November, and maybe until Inauguration Day in January of next year, is going to see an uptick in geopolitical risk. And that matters for your listeners because they're all watching the Fed. Conflicts are inflationary, and this is the time to go for it.
And to that point, and I'll go back to, I think it was February 24, 2 years ago, our first interview on Ukraine was David Folkerts-Landau at Deutsche Bank. And the first thing out of Dr. Folkerts-Landau's mouth was there will be a fiscal oomph, that the austerity of Europe will end, and there will be the spending that Tina Fordham talks about there over 2 years on as well. I want to talk about one concept here on Single Best Idea that's important, and it's sort of an ugly chart. Like if I say the yield, the yield on the nominal visible 10-year yield, or even if you adjust for inflation and you call it the real yield, they're not really elegant, well-contained charts. The real yield is more elegant than the nominal yield. So if I say the yield's in a range, which I think we all understand, and if the yield comes down to the support of that range, will it break through? Something changed today into this Fed meeting. I have no idea what's going to happen at the press conference. But a question here into August is, do we finally see the yield on the nominal 10-year or the inflation-adjusted 10-year break down into new disinflationary territory, and that ambiguity over why that's occurring, including slower U.S. or global economic growth. And of course, that gets back to China. Just some of the mysteries into August of 2024. We're out on YouTube. Subscribe, Bloomberg Podcasts. I can't say enough about it. There's a New York Times article in the last 12 hours on YouTube. Please read it. It's extraordinary, the impact. And we're seeing that every day here at Bloomberg, on Apple CarPlay, on Android Auto, and of course on Apple Podcasts, single best idea.